The little girl's cry cut through the cold hospital entrance like a siren, sharp and desperate, echoing off glass doors and polished floors, and for a brief moment everyone froze as if the world itself had stumbled. She was small, her shoes worn thin, her jacket 2 sizes too big, her face red from crying as she clutched her mother's hand with a strength that came from pure fear. Her voice carried one simple truth that shattered the calm order of the place. Her mother was sick, and powerful men in uniforms were stopping her from getting inside. In that instant, something ancient and human stirred in the air, because injustice, when seen through the eyes of a child, becomes impossible to ignore. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and ordinary people standing up when systems fail, take a moment right now to like this video, comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel, because stories like this remind us who we are meant to be. It was early morning, the kind where the sky is still undecided between night and day, and the hospital stood like a fortress of glass and steel, glowing faintly under fluorescent lights. Security guards followed procedure, repeating rules they had memorized but no longer felt. The woman, the child's mother, was pale and shaking, her breathing shallow. One arm wrapped around her abdomen as if holding herself together by sheer will. She had been referred here after weeks of worsening pain, but paperwork, insurance verification, and a missing authorization code had turned her emergency into a problem to be postponed. The guards did not see a mother or a patient. They saw a line on a checklist that had not been completed. The girl, however, saw her entire world slipping away, and fear gave her the courage to cry out louder than any adult in the room. People passing by slowed their steps. Some looked away, uncomfortable. Others whispered that it was not their business. The mother tried to calm her child, stroking her hair with trembling fingers, forcing a weak smile that fooled no one. She had learned long ago how quickly dignity could dissolve when money and systems decided your worth. She had lost her husband years earlier in a factory accident, and since then life had been a careful balancing act of rent, food, school fees, and hope. There was no one she could call to fix this. The hospital was the last stop, and the doors were closed. Outside, the low rumble of engines began to grow, at first blending into the background noise of the city, then rising with unmistakable presence. One by one, motorcycles rolled into the parking area, heavy machines gleaming with chrome and black leather, their riders moving with practiced ease. Jackets marked with the Hells Angels insignia caught the early light, wings spread wide across broad backs. Conversations faltered. Some people stiffened, old fears and stereotypes surfacing instantly. To many, these men represented danger, chaos, everything parents warned their children about. Few noticed how their engines quieted almost in unison, or how their attention turned not to the building, but to the sound of a child crying. The riders dismounted slowly, boots hitting the pavement with a solid finality. There were about a dozen of them, different ages, some with gray in their beards, others still young, but all carrying the same alert focus. One of them, a tall man with weathered hands and eyes that had seen too much, paused as the girl's voice reached him clearly. He did not rush. He listened. He followed the sound to the hospital entrance and saw the scene unfold in front of him. A child pressed against her mother, guards blocking the way, people pretending not to see. Something tightened in his chest, a memory surfacing of his own daughter years ago, sick with fever, held in his arms while he waited for help that came too late. He had sworn, silently, that he would never walk past that kind of pain again. The Hells Angels moved as a group, not aggressively, but with a presence that shifted the air. They stood back at first, observing, understanding more than people gave them credit for. One rider noticed the mother's pallor, the way she leaned slightly as if gravity itself was too heavy. Another saw the child's fingers digging into fabric, knuckles white. The security guards stiffened, their voices tightening, procedures suddenly feeling fragile in the face of leather vests and steel machines. Yet no threats were made. No shouting followed. What came instead was something far more unsettling to indifference: calm determination. The tall rider stepped forward just enough to be seen, his posture open but unyielding. He gestured gently toward the woman and child, making it clear who mattered in this moment. Hospital staff began to gather, drawn by curiosity and concern. A nurse near the desk glanced at the mother again and frowned, recognizing the signs of a condition that should not be waiting outside. She hesitated, caught between policy and instinct, the same conflict that quietly defined her job. The presence of the bikers tipped the scale, not through fear, but through visibility. Suddenly, this was no longer a private struggle that could be delayed. Too many eyes were watching. The child's crying softened into exhausted sobs as one of the riders crouched a few steps away, lowering himself to her level without touching her, without invading her space. His voice, low and steady, did not need to be heard clearly to be understood. His body language said everything. The girl looked up at him, confused by the patches in the beard, but she also saw something else: attention. Real attention. For the first time that morning, an adult had stopped everything else to focus on her fear. Her sobs slowed, and she clung a little less tightly to her mother. Inside the hospital, a supervisor was called. Words like liability and exception floated through the air, but so did words like risk and emergency. The mother swayed, and one of the nurses instinctively reached out to steady her, breaking the invisible barrier that rules had created. A wheelchair appeared, as if summoned by urgency itself. The guards exchanged looks, the script they relied on suddenly insufficient. When the decision was finally made, it felt less like permission and more like relief. The doors slid open, and the mother was guided inside, her child walking beside her, eyes wide, as if afraid this kindness might vanish if she blinked. The Hell's Angels did not follow. They stayed outside, forming an unspoken line between the hospital and the rest of the world, engines quiet, presence unwavering. They did not need thanks or recognition. This was not about reputation. It was about balance, about using the weight of who they were to tip a moment toward mercy. Time passed differently then, stretching and contracting with every update that trickled back through a nurse who dared to smile at them. The diagnosis, when it came, confirmed what could have turned tragic if delayed much longer. Treatment began immediately. As the sun climbed higher, light spilling fully into the parking lot, tension eased. The little girl reappeared at the entrance briefly, escorted by a nurse, her face still tired but no longer panicked. She looked toward the bikers and lifted her hand in a small, uncertain wave, a child's version of gratitude. One by one, rough hands lifted in return, some with a nod, others with a gentle smile that few ever saw. The tall rider felt a quiet ache behind his ribs, the good kind that comes when an old wound finally finds purpose. News of the incident spread, as it always does, filtered through retellings and assumptions. Some would focus on the jackets, the patches, the shock of it. Others would talk about rules bent and authority challenged. But the truth was simpler and harder to dismiss. When a system failed, a child's fear made it visible, and a group of men society often misunderstood chose to stand still long enough to care. They did not save the world. They saved a morning, a mother, a future that might otherwise have been quietly lost. Days later, the mother would lie in a clean hospital bed, color slowly returning to her face, her daughter asleep beside her, clutching a borrowed stuffed animal. She would replay that moment outside the doors again and again, not with bitterness, but with awe at how help arrived from the least expected place. She would think about how close she came to being sent away, and how a child's voice in a group of strangers changed the course of her life. Gratitude would settle in her chest, heavy and warm, something she would carry forever. Before we reach the end of this story, take a moment to comment below and tell us what kindness means to you, or share a time when someone unexpected showed up for you when you needed it most. Your words might be exactly what another viewer needs to read today. The Hell's Angels rode away eventually, engines roaring back to life, disappearing into traffic like they had never been there at all. They did not linger for praise, and no camera captured the quiet weight of what they had done. But somewhere deep inside that hospital, a mother healed, a child learned that fear can be answered, and a nurse went home that night reminded why she chose her profession in the first place. Ripples spread outward in small, unseen ways, changing how people would act the next time they saw someone in need. If this story reached you, if it stirred something in your chest or made your eyes sting just a little, please like this video, share it, and leave a comment. Engage with it not for numbers, but because every interaction helps stories of compassion travel farther than stories of cruelty. In a world that often feels hard and divided, moments like this remind us that humanity can still surprise us, and sometimes, hope arrives on two wheels, carrying the courage to stand where others walk past.